As Rosehaven flourished, so did the stories of its healing powers, drawing more and more people from distant lands. The village became a sanctuary not only for those seeking solace but also for those hoping to find the courage to move forward, to leave behind the chains of their pasts and embrace new beginnings. The desert rose, still as radiant as ever, stood at the heart of the village, its petals serving as a constant reminder of the transformative power of love, hope, and redemption. Among the new faces that came to Rosehaven was a young woman named Layla. She had heard the tales of the desert rose, of its ability to heal even the most broken of hearts. Her journey to the village was driven by desperation. She had lost her mother to illness, and in the years that followed, she had struggled to find meaning in her life. She felt as though a part of her had been lost forever, and no matter where she went, the emptiness inside her remained. She came to Rosehaven in search of a miracle, but deep down, she wasn't sure if she was ready to believe that such a miracle was possible. When Layla arrived in the village, she was met with kindness and warmth. The villagers welcomed her with open arms, sharing their stories of healing and transformation. As she listened to their tales, she began to realize that perhaps the true magic of Rosehaven was not just in the rose itself but in the community that had grown around it. A community bound together by love, loss, and the shared belief that healing was possible. One evening, after settling into a small cottage near the desert rose, Layla ventured out into the village. She found herself drawn to the rose, just as so many others had before her. She stood in silence beneath its blooming petals, unsure of what she was hoping for. Some sign, some reassurance that her pain could be healed. As she gazed at the rose, a soft breeze brushed against her face, carrying with it the scent of its sweet fragrance. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of something within her. A sense of peace that she hadn't known since before her mother's passing. Layla's thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice, gentle yet filled with understanding. She turned to find an elderly woman standing beside her, her eyes kind but knowing. The woman smiled warmly and spoke with a voice that seemed to carry the weight of years of wisdom. "You're looking for something, aren't you?" she asked, her gaze lingering on Layla's face. Layla nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I don't know what I'm searching for," she admitted. "I've lost so much. I don't know how to move forward." The elderly woman's smile deepened, and she reached out to gently touch Layla's arm. Sometimes, the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the freedom to let go. To accept that what we've lost will always be with us, but it doesn't have to define us. We carry their love with us, and through that love, we find the strength to heal. Layla's eyes filled with tears as the weight of the woman's words settled in her heart. It was as though the wall she had built around her grief had begun to crumble, and for the first time in years, she felt a sense of release. The pain was still there, but it no longer felt so overwhelming. In that moment, she understood that healing wasn't about erasing the past, it was about learning to live with it, to honor it, and to allow it to shape her without letting it consume her. The elderly woman gently squeezed Layla's hand, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the night as if she had never been there at all. Layla stood there, watching the moonlight dance on the petals of the desert rose, a soft sense of peace settling over her heart. She realized then that the journey of healing was not a linear path but a winding road with unexpected turns and moments of clarity. From that day forward, Layla returned to the desert rose every evening. She sat beneath its branches, allowing herself to feel the full weight of her grief, but also allowing herself to feel the lightness of healing that came with each passing day. Slowly, she began to reconnect with the world around her, finding joy in the small moments, laughing with the villagers, tending to the garden, and slowly letting herself dream of a future that didn't feel weighed down by loss. The story of Rosehaven continued to grow, as more and more people discovered the power of love, loss, and rebirth that lay within its borders. The desert rose remained the heart of the village, its petals blooming with each new chapter, each new story of healing and renewal. And through it all, the villagers knew that no matter what they had endured, there was always the possibility of starting anew, of finding love again, of healing the heart, and of learning that the past, while never forgotten, did not have to dictate the future. For as long as the desert rose bloomed, so too would the village of Rosehaven, forever a symbol of hope, of love, and of the endless potential for transformation that resides in every heart. As the seasons passed, the village of Rosehaven continued to thrive, its reputation growing far and wide. It became a place not just for those seeking healing, but also for those seeking answers to the mysteries of their own hearts, their own lives. Many came to Rosehaven with broken spirits, hoping to find peace and solace in its serene landscape. Yet, the village also attracted those who had yet to understand the power of healing, those who came with skepticism and doubt. Among these new arrivals was a man named Amir. He was a successful businessman from a distant land, known for his sharp mind and his ability to turn any venture into a fortune. Yet, beneath his outward success, there was a deep emptiness in his heart. He had lost his wife in a tragic accident years ago, and the grief he had carried with him had festered, leaving him emotionally distant from those around him. He had heard whispers of the mystical healing powers of Rosehaven and came, not in search of solace, but hoping to find a way to bury his pain once and for all. Amir arrived at the village with a sense of detachment, his eyes cold and calculating, as though he were simply another business transaction to be completed. He observed the villagers with a mixture of curiosity and disdain, unable to understand how they could find peace in such a place. The desert rose stood at the center of the village, but to Amir it was just another flower, no different from the countless others he had passed in his life. However, as the days wore on, something began to shift within him. He found himself drawn to the rose, though he would never admit it. He watched as villagers sat beneath its branches, their faces calm, their hearts at peace. And slowly, a sense of longing began to stir within him. Longing for something he could not name, something he had buried deep inside. One evening, after spending days wandering the village in silence, Amir approached the desert rose, his mind still filled with doubt but his heart now open to something beyond his understanding. He sat on a bench near the rose, the scent of its petals filling the air. The same elderly woman who had spoken to Layla months before appeared once again, her presence gentle and knowing. She had been watching Amir from a distance, observing his inner turmoil. Without a word, she sat beside him, her eyes fixed on the rose. Amir hesitated for a moment before speaking, his voice rough from years of silence. "I don't believe in magic," he said, his tone flat. "I've spent my life building things, creating empires. But none of it has brought me peace. This village, this rose, it's all just a distraction." The woman smiled softly, her eyes filled with understanding. "It is not magic that brings peace," she said, her voice steady and calm. "It is acceptance. Acceptance of the past, of the pain, of the things we cannot change. Only then can we find the space to heal." Amir's brow furrowed as he processed her words. He wanted to reject them, to hold on to the walls he had built around his heart. But something about her presence, her quiet wisdom, made him pause. "You can't just move on from grief," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "You can't just erase it." "No," the woman agreed gently. "You don't erase it. But you can learn to live with it. To carry it with you, without letting it consume you. Grief is a part of you, but it doesn't have to define you." Amir sat in silence for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the rose. The woman's words echoed in his mind, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel the weight of his loss without trying to bury it. The pain was still there, raw and sharp, but it no longer felt like something he had to fight against. He understood in that moment that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant learning to live with what had been lost and finding the strength to move forward. As the sun set and the evening stars began to twinkle above, Amir rose from the bench, a sense of calm settling over him that he had not known in years. He walked away from the desert rose that night, not with all the answers, but with a new understanding of himself, of his grief, and of the possibility of healing. He had taken the first step toward acceptance, and that was enough. From that day forward, Amir returned to Rosehaven each year, finding solace in its quiet beauty. He no longer sought to bury his pain, but to honor it. And through his journey of acceptance, he discovered that peace was not something to be found outside himself, but something that could only come from within. Rosehaven, with its desert rose at the center, continued to be a place of transformation for all who sought healing. It was a village that understood that the road to healing was not an easy one, but it was a road that could be walked with love, with grace, and with the understanding that even the deepest wounds could one day be healed. As the years passed, Rosehaven continued to thrive, its reputation as a place of profound healing spreading far and wide. More people came to the village, some seeking the wisdom of the elders, others hoping to be touched by the power of the desert rose. Each person who arrived carried their own stories of sorrow and loss, yet found solace in the village's quiet embrace. And though the road to healing was never without its challenges, many found peace in Rosehaven, just as Amir had. Amir, for his part, became a regular visitor to the village. Over time, he learned to open his heart in ways he never thought possible. His encounters with the villagers, many of whom had suffered their own trials, became a source of comfort for him. He no longer saw them as mere strangers. Instead, he viewed them as fellow travelers on a journey toward peace. One such traveler was a young woman named Layla. She had grown up in the city, a place where the hustle and bustle of life had left her little room for reflection. But after a personal tragedy, she sought refuge in Rosehaven, drawn to the whispers of its healing powers. Like Amir, she arrived with skepticism, her heart burdened by pain she wasn't sure she could overcome. When Layla first arrived, she found herself drawn to the desert rose as well. The vibrant petals of the flower seemed to glow in the morning light, and the air around it felt charged with an energy she couldn't explain. It wasn't long before she met Amir, who had returned to the village once again. Their paths crossed in the village square, where they exchanged stories of their journeys toward healing. "Do you really believe that the rose has the power to heal?" Layla asked Amir one afternoon, her voice tinged with doubt. Amir smiled softly, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. I didn't believe in it at first, he admitted. I thought it was just a story, a fairy tale. But now I know that it's not the rose that heals, it's the willingness to face the pain and the willingness to let go. The rose is a reminder of that. Layla pondered his words, her eyes drifting toward the desert rose. She couldn't deny the sense of peace that lingered in the air whenever she was near it. Maybe there was more to the village than just the flower. Maybe it was the village itself, the collective wisdom and the shared journey of those who sought healing, that made it so powerful. As Layla spent more time in Rosehaven, she began to open her heart to the possibility of healing. She talked with the villagers, listened to their stories, and slowly allowed herself to face the pain she had carried for so long. And while the road was still difficult, she found herself moving forward, one step at a time. Amir and Layla became close friends, their shared experiences and understanding of the healing process creating a bond between them. Both had arrived in Rosehaven seeking something they didn't fully understand, but both left with a sense of peace they hadn't thought possible. Amir, having finally learned to accept his grief, found that his heart had opened in ways he never imagined. The love he had lost was still with him, but it no longer defined his every waking moment. He had learned that peace was not a destination, but a journey, one that was never linear, but full of twists and turns, ups and downs. Layla too found that healing wasn't a matter of erasing the past, but of accepting it. She learned to carry her sorrow without letting it consume her, and in doing so, found a sense of freedom she had never known. Together, they became a part of Rosehaven's story, just as it had become a part of theirs. The village, with its peaceful surroundings and its sacred desert rose, continued to be a place where people came to seek healing, to find themselves, and to discover that peace could be found even in the midst of pain. And so, the story of Rosehaven lived on, an eternal tale of healing, acceptance, and the quiet beauty of a place where the heart could find rest. For in the end, it was not the rose itself that healed the villagers, but the love and wisdom they found in each other, and in the quiet moments of reflection that allowed them to truly understand the meaning of peace. As the seasons passed, Rosehaven continued to evolve, a quiet beacon for all who sought refuge from the storms of life. The village grew, not just in population, but in spirit. People who had once arrived with sorrow in their hearts now left with a deeper understanding of themselves, their place in the world, and the importance of healing. The desert rose, still standing at the heart of it all, seemed to bloom more vibrantly with each passing year, as though it too shared in the village's journey toward peace. Amir, now a regular visitor and a cherished figure in Rosehaven, continued to deepen his connection with the village and its people. He had come to view the rose not only as a symbol of healing, but as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. He would often spend his mornings by its side, meditating in its shade, reflecting on the lessons it had taught him. It was in those quiet moments that he found clarity, and with each breath, he felt the weight of the past slowly lifting. Layla too had found her place in Rosehaven. She had taken to working with the village's elders, learning the ways of healing and offering her support to those who were new to the village. It had become a calling for her, something she felt deeply connected to, and she knew that this was where she was meant to be. Her own healing journey had brought her peace, but it had also given her the strength to help others walk the same path. One day, as the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the village, Amir and Layla sat together on a small bench by the desert rose. They watched as the last of the light danced on the petals, casting long shadows across the village square. I've learned so much here, Layla said quietly, her voice thoughtful. Not just about healing, but about life itself. About how we carry the weight of our past, and how we can choose to let it go. Amir nodded, his gaze focused on the rose. It's a hard lesson to learn, he said softly. But the hardest part isn't letting go of the pain. It's allowing yourself to live without it, to move forward with an open heart. Layla smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I think I'm finally ready to live without it, she said, her voice filled with a quiet determination. Amir turned to face her, his eyes filled with understanding. You will, he said simply. You've already taken the first step. As the evening fell, the village seemed to come alive with a quiet energy, as if the desert rose itself was sharing its wisdom with all who were willing to listen. The air was filled with the hum of life, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant sound of children's laughter, the murmur of voices as villagers gathered to share stories. It was a sound that spoke of hope, of healing, of the endless cycle of life and renewal. Amir and Layla sat in comfortable silence, knowing that their paths had been intertwined in ways neither of them could have predicted. Both had come to Rosehaven with heavy hearts, seeking answers, seeking peace. And both had found what they were looking for, not in the rose, not in the village itself, but in the connections they had forged with others, in the quiet moments of reflection, and in the love that had blossomed between them. The days that followed, they continued their work in the village, offering support to those who needed it, and sharing their wisdom with anyone who sought it. And though they knew that the journey of healing would never truly be complete, they found peace in the knowledge that they had each other, and that the village of Rosehaven would always be a place where they could return to, whenever they needed to find solace. And so, the story of Rosehaven continued, a timeless tale of healing love, and the quiet power of a place where the soul could rest, where the heart could mend, and where, in the presence of the desert rose, all things were possible.